should move into this. So we're going to get going now that it's 5 o'clock. So we're calling this meeting to order. First thing we're going to do is Pledge of Allegiance. You all please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all. Next on the agenda is an executive session. So for those of you that are here, we have some business that we need to tend to. We're going to keep it to 30 minutes. So it'll be 5:30 when we come back to our public session, or a couple minutes after. I think we'll be done in 30. We're going to keep it really close to that time box. So you'll have about a half hour to roam and hand out, read books, whatever you want to do at the library. But we're going to go and move into executive session. Invited to this executive session will be the Board of Trustees, Brandy Green and Tammy Sales. So
I move that the Pikes Peak Library District Board of Trustees enter into executive session to conference where the Pikes Peak Library District's attorney for purposes of receiving legal advice as authorized by CRS 24-6-4024B.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll be moving that way shortly. Thank you all. We're going to go back to our public meeting. Next public comment. We have 4 individuals signed up for public comment tonight. So Jeremiah is going to call your name. When he calls your name, you'll come to the end of the table. That way the microphone can pick you up as people listening online.
John Darrow.
We have someone else speaking, and if we can, he'll yield his time to me. If not, then he can finish.
So we're going to let him finish. Thank you.
Yep. So my name is John Gerald. I am the president of Pikes Peak Library Workers United, a CWA affiliate union that represents workers in this library. And I have 3 statements that I want to read that were authorized by the union to read to the board. But before I do that, I first want to thank you for your service to the community. This really is something, this is work you should be proud of. Being on this board is a true service to the community. We know it's not easy. We know that you face a lot of difficult decisions on this board. So the first statement that I'm going to read is, we ask that you give library workers a minimum cost of living adjustment of 3.5%, which is now predicted to be the inflation rate for 2023. Any raise below 3.5% will result in less money in real terms than we made at the end of 2022. That was the statement. I just want to add to that, that this isn't to say that we don't deserve pay raises based on merit as well, or that we would not accept a cost of living adjustment that made up for adjustments that we've missed in the past. But what I do want to say is that if we get an adjustment less than that, then you'll be asking the workers to help pay for the deficit at the library. Okay, the second statement that I'm going to read is, part-time workers should be given the opportunity to pick up substitute hours to the maximum amount of 29 hours weekly. This will benefit understaffed branches and prevent closures due to staffing shortages, as well as reduce strain on frontline staff and support part-time workers. It's that final statement that I really want to focus on. So we can't give benefits to all part-time workers. We don't have the money for it. But one thing that we can do is bring back sub hours, which was one of the ways when I was a part-time worker, I was able to make a living wage. It also gives workers an opportunity to network while they're at the library, because you get to work at different places and meet different people. And then the final statement is, the district needs to update the code of conduct to include a firm rule against hate speech in clearly defined terms. Using verbal or written insult or slur about a specific person based on race, gender, sexuality, or other protected class is a more aggravated form of harassment than other forms and should result in a suspension from the library. And I just want to add to that, that we're expected to take a lot of abuse working with the public. It's inevitable. I teach a class at the library about how to deal with some of the problems that we face. But there should be clear lines drawn so that we as staff can better manage these behaviors while in the library and can expect that support from the library when certain lines are crossed. And so actually we may be done. We may not need the next person to speak. I do want to finish by saying that we have the same goals here, right? We want high morale from the staff. We want low turnover, and we look forward to working with this board to make those things happen. So thank you.
Next up is Jacob Ward.
I was a job.
Okay. Next up, Dale.
Hello, I have a quote from Benjamin Franklin about libraries. These libraries have improved the general conversation of Americans, made the common tradesmen and farmers as intelligent as most gentlemen from other countries, and perhaps have contributed in some degree to the stand so generally made throughout the colonies in defense of their privileges. For me, a library isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for democracy. It's a necessity for equality. And I want to thank you all for your work to keep this library going. And I believe funding the library is one of the most important things we can do as a city. Thank you.
Katie Zukas. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that.
Hi, I'm Katie Chukas, and I am here to speak on behalf of being a patron of the library. I am somebody who does things in hard copy. I'm somebody who does things in electronic copy, but I'm also somebody who comes to the library to work. As a small business owner and as parent of children who are in school, I need to find many different times to work. And a library is a great safe space that is air conditioned. It is a safe place for me to be to work. And I do feel that requests that we had when we were thinking about the strategy a year ago of having libraries open on Sunday would be extremely valuable to people who try to fit in the working hours at various times. Again, that's very important for families with small children. I'd also say that reserving study rooms, it is extremely difficult to do that on your own. I find that I often have to do the method that probably the staff likes the least, which is to call them. And to call them and to say, hey, do you have a study room? And so, for example, this evening, it was very difficult for me to reserve a study room for a 60-minute period. I didn't need it for the whole 120, but I needed it for 60 minutes. And because I wanted it at 7 o'clock, and I'm using the self-service, and I want it for 60 minutes, I keep going 7, 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, and I keep getting blocked. Because you guys want to close the library at 8, that's fine. So then don't have the library study rooms open until 8 if you can't reserve them from 7:45 to 8. It's a very complicated user experience for people who need to use the library. And again, you probably prefer that somebody who is technologically capable as me, works in the technology sector, could do this self-service rather than calling your staff and spending 15 minutes with them trying to find me a room. So please, if you can match up the self-service things to actually how you want to enforce policy at the sites when it comes to study rooms, that would be extremely valuable. Thank you.
You have another one? Yep. Thank you. All right, thank you. Next, we're gonna move into our reports. Friend of the Pikes Peak Library District, Miss Jordan.
Good evening. So I feel wonderful coming up at some of those public comments that how people love the library, because that's what the Friends are all about, is giving to the library and supporting you and everything. So just to real quickly, we have 2 big events coming up. Latina Voices is coming up the end of September, 30 September. As of this morning, we had 129 folks who have responded saying RSVP, and we only said we request that you RSVP, so we didn't make it mandatory. So we're just so pleased because for the last few years we've sort of been at 70 kind of mark. So this is wonderful. So that, and then also I'm just so happy that librarians are on they keep track of what we're doing, because this morning I was in the library at Monument and the adult services said, Rita, the book sale's coming up. When are we getting our bookmark? When are we getting the posters? And I'm like, oh, okay. So our fall book sale is coming up in October, the second weekend, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. We are getting inundated with donations for the book sale. We already have 700 boxes of books that would so we just we're anticipating that hopefully we will be able to keep our financial support going to PPLD. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next is the PPLD Foundation, Mr. James.
Long way, what?
Good evening. Any questions about the report? As it was. Awesome. Kind of in the spirit, serendipitous. So I just wanted to share this note, not AI generated, as you can see. And it's like my favorite part of the day is opening the mail and getting these notes from our donors. But just one that I thought was good to share and just again, that passion that people have for their public libraries. So it came with a charitable gift, and she says, "Dear friends, your letter brought back memories of my school days and the lack of a library or books to read. My sister and I were so hungry for a good book to read. We had a shelf in one room at school where kids could put books they didn't want, but it was usually comic books. When we got to high school, we were in hog heaven when we found the library. My sister read Beautiful Joe about an abused dog, and also A Lantern in Her Hand about a woman on a Kansas prairie to my siblings and me. We were raised in Appalachia and could only wonder about flatland such as a prairie. I will take a good book over anything. I just finished The Bloody Benders, couldn't put it down. I lived in Cherryville, Kansas a few years and heard a lot about the Benders. Sorry about the rambling note. I love books."
That's good. How was the gala going?
Now,
How
great
are the
question.
numbers for the gala?
So we are T-minus 1 month and 1 day.
Mhm.
Who's counting?
Right.
This guy is. So as of today, we have 241 confirmed folks coming. I mean, we're still, for those who have done events in Colorado Springs, this is a last minute town.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I'm still expecting a number of ticket sales to come in, but I know I've been working with the corporate sponsors that we had kind of in our back pocket, feeling good about where we are. And but definitely, if you know people who are looking for something to do on October 21st, we'd love to have them here for Night at the Library.
Mr. James,
Yes.
we have a lot of people here who are not normally in our meetings. Where might they find more information?
So I will leave information postcards. If anyone wants to pick one up on the way out. Night at the Library is a fundraiser for the library, or you can go to ppld.org/night at the library.
Thank you. And this is a first annual for the foundation, so it's a big event for us, or us, the collective us.
Yes.
And so we're really trying to get some support behind it. So if you haven't heard of it, please go check it out. It looks like it's going to be a phenomenal night. So thank you for all your work on it.
Thanks.
All right, next is our financial report. Mr. Green.
Good evening, board members. So starting on page 1, PPLD as a whole. We are tracking ahead on our revenue number year-to-date budget. Most of that, as you can see, is due to our interest income. 813,000, and our donations and fundraising is about $379,000 over our projected budget for this month. Expenses are still tracking very similar to what they've been tracking. I am still trying to get the I've got a little closer this last month, but with the budget and all that going on, the trending. So but it's still tracking about the same as it's been tracking. The general fund, the next page, again, our revenue is up $1 million. Expenditures are about $3 million, so there's probably some, part of that's coming in from capital, about 700,000 favorable on capital. Our departmental expenses are running on budget. The exception of the two that have been hanging that way all year is the interdepartmental and the designated funds. Facilities and IT is still showing high. I think for sure on facilities, I've mentioned this before, that part of that is the straight lining of the expense we had in there for the consult for the facility, and so that's affecting their number. The capital, we are showing, I'll just go right down to the bottom line, the number that's in there for the actual is not quite what it ended up being for the audit. I'll adjust that before next month's meeting, but we're basically $42,000 under our budget balance. So that's coming along nicely. And our self-insurance fund, we are tracking very well on this. Again, I think the employee contributions, it's probably a percentage problem with the original budget, that why that's coming out like that. We're definitely collecting our employee contributions, just not as vigorously as I had put on our budget. Operating expenses for our claims are actually coming in again below what we have budgeted. Meetings that we've had with the insurance broker and our recent rate activity looks, it really looks like we're gonna come in much lighter load than we did last year. I will probably, I had to move $400,000 out of general fund last year. So depending on how we come out this year, I will probably move that back to the general fund this year, because it'll be back to a good spot. I'll have some adjustments, budget reconciliation resolutions for October. I'll present those at the October 3rd meeting with internal affairs, and start winding those into the last 3 months of the year. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Thank you. Next is our support services reports. And for those of you who aren't aware, those are typically written. Well, let me finish with the support services. I'm not the one thing off on my agenda. The support services report is a written report that we receive ahead of time, so it's not really a verbal report, so there's not much that you'll hear here. Sorry, I skipped you, Amy. Public services report.
It's okay. So knowing we had a pretty full agenda tonight, I just wanted to direct your attention to page 23 of your report. This is our new key performance indicators, where we're gonna, if it's okay and you are good with it, this is how we're gonna report our stats now from now on. This was at the suggestion of Colleen Mendling, our ILS administrator in collection management. She felt like they could compile this in one simple report, and now it can be in a font that's readable. So really appreciate that. And it's reduced a few pages of report. So
I thought this was great fun.
yeah, I like it. They did a great job. Yes.
I love the infographics.
Yes.
Those are really cool.
Yes.
Any questions for team?
But he's doing great work.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Support services reports. Any questions or comments on those? Oops. Interim chief librarians report, Ms. Sales.
I do have a longer report for this one. So a couple of things did occur in the last month. Michael Bratner, Tiffany Paisley, and I had a follow-up meeting with the Colorado Springs Police Department. Officer Wilkerson came in again. We did another walkthrough of the Penrose branch. He was pleased that we had made some security and safety adjustments in the building, had a few for us. And so it was a really productive conversation. Tayona, Tiffany Paisley, Michael Brantner, and I also had a meeting with Steve Posey, who's the city's chief housing officer, and Crystal Carr, who's the homeless prevention and response coordinator with the city. We talked about, some of our similar concerns and the understanding that the mayor had added, the homelessness issue to his 100-day agenda. So we wanted to talk about that. We ended up sharing a discussion about some of the services that not only the Penrose branch, but our other departments have been providing throughout the district with them. Many of them they were unaware of. They asked for a summary of all of those services. So Tayona compiled a letter and that was sent this week that outlines many of those services that we provide. We also then requested, the mayor has announced that a task force is being developed and that we would really like to participate in that. And we offered up meeting room space to host one of those task force meetings. So more hopefully will be yet to come. Tayona had an opportunity. She attended the 9/11 memorial event with Michael Brantner earlier this month. Heather and I attended the economic forum on behalf of the library district. And then Tayona, Heather, and I also attended the State of the City address.
Awesome. So how is the Holocaust exhibit?
Holocaust exhibit is going wonderfully. So they've had lots of tours. I think the opening had a really large attendance to that. It'll be here October 7th or the 10th, 11th. Thank you. So it'll be at East for a while, a few more weeks. So it's been very well received. There's also a supplemental display at Old Colorado City that goes along with that. So yes, if you get a chance to stop by and see it. I haven't yet. It's on my weekend agenda. So.
Any questions? Moving on to our board reports, governance committee.
All right, so we met. And we had several things that we discussed. One of which I'll get into when we get down to the business items. But we did talk briefly about the board retreat recap. We also got we got copies of the conflict of interest statements. And what we'll be doing is as a committee, we'll be going through those and making some changes, or not making changes because they need to be approved for next year. So we're kind of trying to get a head start on that. Then we also discussed a lot of the candidates, and I appreciate everybody that's here tonight. Thank you for coming. We had about 24 apply. And we'll be meeting several of them after the meeting tonight. Just to kind of give you a little time frame, what we'll do is after the meeting tonight and the little get together afterwards, that the governance meeting will start on the 3rd, and we'll probably discuss a little bit more about that, but we'll also be providing the city council and county commissioners recommendations, but they have the final say on what it is will be, or who will be on the board for next year. They will also be setting up interviews roughly around the October to even November timeframe. It just depends on when they can squeeze that in. And once they make that decision, they'll go to the council and the commissioners, and they'll do the final vote during one of their meetings. And then that new applicant will be appointed for the January board meeting. So again, those are all tentative timelines. Those could change, just depends on scheduling and agendas that the councils and the commissioners currently have. That is all I have.
Sorry. Next is our internal affairs report.
Mine is short. We met and we talked over the hall operations, which I think we're going to look at here shortly. We have a packet about that. So Tammy's going to go over a lot of that information with us. I'm sure it's going to be kind of a conversation. And then we went through the equal employment opportunity policy with Heather, which we're also looking at tonight. And we basically just looked at the legal updates for that. It's pretty much all things that we have to have in that policy. So you'll get a look at that shortly. And that was it.
And then public affairs did not meet this month, so we don't have to. Next is our liaison comments. Do we have any of our liaisons? Yeah. I was looking earlier at the meeting.
I believe they're all out of town.
Oh,
several
Yeah.
did last-
See, it says- Trustee comments.
I had the opportunity to visit 2 branches in this month. I got to attend a staff meeting at Penrose, and it was great. And I was really impressed with how excited everybody is to work there. And even though it has had challenges, as we know, they really see that as a way to serve the community in addition to a job. So that was great. Also, I got a personal lesson on how to work the parking kiosk. So if you guys so had a really good time just kind of brainstorming our shared belief that a strong downtown really needs a strong downtown library. It needs to be a hub where people want to go and things are happening. And we sort of started at what if we had all the money in the world? And then we brought it down to real life. So it was a good meeting. And then I got to go to Rock Grumman for their staff meeting. And as we all know, that's my personal branch, so my personal favorite. And they are, if you've ever been in that branch right after school gets out, the amount of the number of middle school kids who come into that branch is unbelievable. And they work really closely with Eagle View. They have a good relationship with the principal, and so they work out activities and stuff. And so yeah, it was great to see people doing good creative things and being excited about it.
I'd like to comment. I did attend the opening reception for the Holocaust Traveling Museum. Very well attended, very good speakers. Had a little bit of time to read through a few of those slides that they have up, and I got to come back and really dig into it. The other thing that I was happy to attend was the Latino luncheon to kick off Hispanic Heritage Month, which is an aside. But the neat thing was that the sheriff spoke. He was a keynote speaker. And afterwards, he had quite a few of his entourage there. And one young woman came up to me because I announced from the library that we were having the Holocaust Museum, Latina Voices. And she said, "You have this document that we just wait for its updates. We use it all the time." So even the sheriff department is using our library monthly. So that is just such great news to hear how many people really utilize everything that we do in the library.
Okay, I'll go if you want.
Sure.
I also had 2 library visits. I met with Tess and her staff at Reef Holly for a staff meeting. And it was before the flooding. It was pre-flooding. But she let me know the last time it didn't really flood, but it leaked. So I was only assuming that it was in the same location. I think that it was confirmed it was in the same location. So a lot of things going on with that library. A lot of events going on with that library as well. Their staff are excited about a lot of their events that they do. So I think that's great. I also met with Katie and Melissa for here at this library, and they walked me around, and Chef Scott was there. So I got to talk to him for a little bit. And we kind of did something similar where if we had buckets of money just lying around, what could we do? And there were a lot of comments and suggestions that he made on what we should be able to do or we should do for the kitchen area. But it was nice to at least have an idea of what's going on. But that's it.
I don't have it.
I had the extreme pleasure of meeting with Gary's crew and the facilities team. He ordered pizza and we all hung out and chatted, and it was just. Gary, are you here? Yeah, your team is an enormous amount of fun. I enjoyed myself immensely. And it was great. And it was an opportunity to dialogue. They had a lot of questions, as many do, about the budgets and potential ballot measures and whatnot. And so it was a really nice time that we were able to chat, not just about the facilities, but some of the other library happenings and then how those relate to each other. So thank you for the invite. I enjoyed it and can't wait to come back around. I've run into them a few times around the district since then. So it's pretty good. Appreciate all that your team does, keeping us moving forward. So thank you. Any other comments? All right. Next up is our presentation, item 6A, Summer Adventure. We have Becca Phillipson and Christopher Funk.
Funky. And I'm Becca Phillipson. Super excited to share about another successful summer adventure. Our total registrations for this year were 14,363. It goes from ages 0 to 18. Total completions 5,447, and then we participants completed by either doing something creative, which we call Imagine, or some kind of movement or reading every day, and they logged 220,133 days. So we work hard to equip and empower the staff at all of our libraries to promote summer adventure, and it paid off. We were within 1% of last year's enrollment numbers, and the program was 2 weeks shorter this year. This year, we just went June 1st through July 31st, and last year we went and we did that to empower staff as we continue the new trainings and resources we implemented last year, such as the new staff orientation, summer adventure checklist. We had simplified the summer ambassadors training so all frontline staff could take it, and we had the decorating contest to make our spaces inviting. And we did make a few changes to the program this year. Like I mentioned, it was 2 weeks shorter. We did that based off of staff feedback that there's some of our schools go back, one of our school districts goes back to school like at the beginning of August, and there's just so much back to school stuff that going into August was hard. It was also very important to us to continue offering the book as a registration prize for all ages, for that literacy piece and getting more books into the hands of more kids. So we cut the grand prizes in the kickoff bags to prioritize the budget towards having a wide range of book levels and options to choose from. To give you an example of how many books we send out to make sure there's those wide options, for ages 0 to 11 alone, we sent locations 15,752 books.
Wow, awesome.
And some of those are in Spanish, so that we had Spanish. Yes,
in Braille, yes.
Large print. We, thanks to a grant from EDI, we were able to offer a limited number of those, but we received several positive comments, including one that's in the board report from a patron where the kid was so excited that was an option this year. And then another change we made is we used to count 12-year-olds in the kids part of the game and not the teen part, and we moved them up to teens, partly in line with how the state actually counts the statistics. We allow 12-year-olds to volunteer. They can go to teen programs. We hoped it would make them more excited about actually participating. But we did keep the option, as we always do, for, especially in those kind of middle ages, that if they want something off the kids' cart, they can choose a book from whatever the prize is that most interests them. But there is always room for improvement. Our completion rate was about the same as it was last year, so we're continually looking at ways to how do we keep engaging people, and we want them to build those healthy habits. So how do we get them to keep coming back to the library and finish the program? We do also plan to offer journal option for all ages and not just teens next year, so that if there isn't a book out of those 15,000 for the children to choose from, they have something else to choose. And then, we'd still love to add adults to summer adventures, so it can be more intergenerational, multi-generational.
Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specific feedback we've heard from both patrons and staff. So each year we survey patrons about how they felt the program went. We use a survey through Project Outcome, which is a survey system provided through the Public Library Association, and it's really helpful because experts have written the questions we ask, so they are consistent from year to year, and they're really created by people who know how to ask questions well on surveys. So that's really useful for us.
We've used it, I think, since 2016. So we can also look back at all of that data and it will aggregate it for us and we can see how we're doing year to year, what are the big changes. And so that's just a really helpful tool for us in this one specifically. This year we saw 99 kids or teens fill the survey out and 99 caretakers or parents fill the survey out, which felt like, how did that happen? It was exactly even, but I was pleased by that. And really what we saw is what we see most years is that most people really enjoy the program that participate. So the survey asks questions, 4 questions that people can like strongly agree, disagree too. And generally we're in like the 80s and 90s of people agreeing that the program helped their child read more. They are a more confident reader, they use the library. So we really see very high satisfaction rates with people who participate, both kids and teens. Every year it's like, oh, parents went up a little on this measure, teens went up a little bit, but then like the next year it flops. So we're really in line where we are most years on those. The other thing that survey asks is a couple open-ended questions. And all of the like specific information is in the board report. But one thing that I noticed this year is I will go through and like code all of it. So I'll kind of like say, oh, this person said this thing and this person said this thing, but they both are saying that we want more programs. So I kind of code those answers to get a better idea of what people are saying. And when I coded it for the question, what could we do to better help your child learn more? Or what could we help you to learn more? When I took out the answers that were things like more programs or nothing, or like more of this during the year, some really like positive answers to that question, about 10 or 13 parents or caretakers had like what I saw as like a negative thing that they disliked about the program, and only about 5 teens responded with something, kids or teens. So I took that to heart as like, people are really enjoying this program and they just want us to do even more, which is a good feeling. It's a good thing to hear that. So yeah, we were really pleased by that data. And then also, we also survey staff every year to get a feel for what is working, what is not working, what can we do, because we depend so much on our frontline staff to make summer adventures successful every year. They are a massive part of it. And so we are always trying to do things and make it more efficient and effective and help them feel more prepared. And again, this year we were really happy. Most people felt very prepared. They felt like they had the information they needed. They felt like the program was easy to explain. So we were really pleased with that as well. So yeah, so that's just a little information about that feedback we got. Oh yeah, and then I'm going to talk about team programs. So I work with our like a teen, that 12 to 18-year-old age group. And so this year, in addition to the summer reading portion where they like can track what they're doing, we also offer programs for them to participate in. We had 100 programs with 1,087 participants, or around 10 people per program, which is like really good for teenagers. They're a squirrely bunch. It can be hard to get for a program. So we're very happy about that. We really focus on sort of like 3 categories of program. We look at creative programs, social, and skill building. Those creative programs try to give teens a chance to try out new mediums or techniques. So one this year we did was like, in the summer, we like to do a spray painting program because like to spray paint, and it gives them a chance to experiment in a safe way with that spray paint and maybe learn a new art technique. We also like to offer those social programs. There's a lot of data that teens need those outlets to talk to other teens, engage with them on like a peer level where they're doing kind of something fun together. They can practice those social skills. So we do those as well. And then we also like to like slip in those skill building programs. So coding is a really popular one we offer. We do also some skills like sewing. We have some learn to sew type of, or like other fiber arts. And so we find that those 3 categories give us like a really well-rounded variety of programs. So hopefully everyone can find a little something they want to come to. A couple that were really popular this year is we did our life-size game night and our Nailed It program as intergenerational. We wanted to kind of play off the theme of all together now and do things where families can really come together at the library and participate together. So those were really successful. We saw a lot of people come to those. And then we tried something new this year. We did 2 maker camps, one here and one at East. And those were 5 days. It was like a week-long program in the afternoons where teens came and worked with our creative services staff to learn the different equipment in the maker spaces. And then they got to kind of put it all together at the end and have a final project. And that was really successful. They really responded well to that format of program. So we were excited by that as well.
I work primarily with the Family and Children's Services, so I'll talk a little bit about the programming we did for kids and their parents. One thing that we did this year is our Strategic Services School Engagement Librarian really went out and engaged summer schools this year. We took Summer Adventure on the road. We provided either a robotics or art lesson to 914 kids at 41 school and summer camp visits. Some of those would be on the same day, like back to back. And then we signed all of those groups up for Summer Adventure. So those kids who might not otherwise make it into the library were absolutely thrilled to get to pick their books out. So we'd lay out all these books and they'd go through and pick them. And the camp counselors and teachers were really appreciative that we brought the materials, including medals for them to finish the program. And then we went and did all the logging and registrations for them. So they didn't have to worry about that. We also did a new series of programs we called Art Together, which were geared towards ages 3 to 12 to try to be kind of a whole family experience and also be able to be scaled to large libraries and small libraries and large groups and smaller groups. And we had passive programs that we sent out to the different library locations so that there would be fun stuff happening at the library whenever you came in. Scavenger hunts were especially popular. So adding up all of our programs, we had 548 programs attended by 19,010 people, which is about 35 people per program. Passives, staff did try to count for us, but that's kind of hard to count whoever was coloring over in the corner when you're busy. So it's at least 3,090 participants in 24 programs. So the main program categories we do for Family and Children's Services, we have what we call our Summer Fun Series that feature experiences such as live animals, musicians, magicians, puppets, magic shows, learning opportunities. Those new Art Together programs I talked about. For Queens, we did a special spy camp program that was very popular. And then we kept our early literacy programs with the 0 to 5, like our standard story time, baby time, toddler times going. And we had parenting programs such as Lena, which is a program that teaches parents the importance of talking to their child to promote learning and literacy. And then we had 2 summer adventure parties this year, one at East Library, one near Fountain, or outside East Library at the park. And then 2 summer adventure concerts, one up in Monument at a park and one outside the Old Mantua Library. So instead of calling them parties this year, we call them celebrations because we had different things, and both the parties and the concerts were well enjoyed by them. So those are our highlights and our numbers, and thank you for your time.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, that was our.
Great job.
Yes, lots of great work. Yeah, it is, but I'm a numbers person. So this is a nice math problem for somebody somewhere. But when they said of all summer adventure participants stood side by side, the line would stretch from Cheyenne Mountain Zoo to Garden of the Gods. I wonder how many feet that is, or how many miles. Just a little calculation.
Communications, can you give us a social statistic to put on the infographic?
I like that. That's really good. Keeps you thinking.
Any questions? Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you
job.
so much.
Great job.
All right, next up is use of the hall and sales.
All right, so we brought this to Internal Affairs earlier this month, and I wanted to bring it to before the full board to talk about my proposal to phase out the use of the hall to the public. Basically due to safety and security concerns. And so on the desk, on the table, I have some images to try and give you a feel or an idea of the layout and the look of that building, because it's very cut up if you're unfamiliar with it. And so part of the issue that we have with that is really that safety and security setup of the building, because when you enter that building, you're entering that from the lower parking lot of the Penrose building. And so that first page really is what you're greeted with, and it's literally just an entryway where you get to either the elevator or the stairs. And then if you take the elevator or the stairs, you end up into what we refer to as the lower level where the classroom is. But it's a landing area. You have to turn the corner. There's some storage area that's under the stairwell, and then there's a classroom. And then you take the stairs up into the McLaren Hall, the main hall area. And so from the photos of the main hall, you can kind of see both ends of that space, where upstairs on one side are some current office spaces. And then upstairs on the other side is the mezzanine that we refer to, and we have some space up there as well. So the safety and the security part is really, it's difficult to monitor because the building manager's office is in that highest level. They're up there, you know, there is a doorbell that does go off to indicate when the door is opened and somebody walks through. But during times when we have events in the building, the main door is left unlocked and unattended so that people can enter and find their way to where the location is for the event that they're there for. But the door isn't monitored. Now, over time, in the past year and a half, we've made some significant changes to how that building operates. And with those changes, you know, we've ensured that when that building is open and it's open to the public, we have 2 staffers on site for that, because it's very difficult for one individual to walk through that building and ensure that the building is secure, that nobody remains inside the building before it's locked up. So we've insisted that we need to have 2 staff there for that. And then, so with that, the other issue, the biggest issue we have with that is that because there's not other things taking place in that building, it's not like these buildings, right? When somebody cancels an appointment or a reservation that they have, work still goes on, life still goes on within the library, it's impacted, but that's not necessarily the case when it comes to the hall. So there have been several times where, you know, we've asked staff to fill in, to be that second person from other branches or whatever, to come in and be on site for an event. They'll have flexed their schedule to allow to that timing that they've been requested to work there. And then come the day of the event gets canceled. And then it becomes an unexpected closure for them because it's probably the end of the week, like a Saturday. And so there wouldn't necessarily be somewhere else for them to go to. So that's some of the things. The other problem we have with that building, it is an older building, you know, and Michael keeps explaining to me the cabling issue with the elevator, and I asked him again today. But part of that is, as it is now, the elevator provides access to any of that area, all 3 of those floors. So in looking at the way it's set up, even if we had staff offices up there, we couldn't necessarily ensure its security, because if somebody was on the elevator right now, they could get to that third level. And so it would require an updating to the cabling, and we're sure of what that cost would be, because it's all going to depend on what the elevator cables are and whether they can just attach certain internet cables to add the security parts, or if the whole cabling itself needs to be replaced. So that's part of it. Some of the other things to mention that's a little bit difficult with the hall setup is that classroom is on that lower level. There's no restrooms on that lower level. So there have been times where we've had reservations for the classroom and reservations for McLaren Hall, but that would require anybody who needed to use the restroom to come up and walk through the whole presentation taking place in McLaren Hall to get to the restroom in the very front, which is exactly the same area that the speaker tends to be at as well. And so, and then finally, we're desperate for staff space. for staff office space. And so really what we'd really like to do with phasing this out, being open to the public, is use that space for more staff area. And that way we can ensure the building is secure. It will remain unlocked. People can badge in and out of the building. It's a lot more safer for them. In looking at it, we can maintain the McLaren Hall open area, so we could use that for staff training spaces, or if the leadership team or the board of directors wanted to make a reservation for an event, a specific event that they wanted to support, we could do that as well. But then with that, if we were able to do that, that would then allow us to free up some Penrose contingency funds to help implement some of the safety and security items that we'd like to implement at the Penrose building. So if we don't, if we continue to keep the hall open to the public, with some of the restructuring that's happening and trying to ensure some of the new teams can be together, we'll need to use some of those funds to redesign the staff area at Penrose. And with that, that means we are going to be at maximum capacity in that staff area at Penrose. And like I said, we really, we've had some great suggestions, and our preference is to take some of those contingency funds and put those towards some of the safety. I can't remember the term I want to use, but to implement some safety initiatives within the Penrose area to make that a little, have a better line of sight with some changes to the shelving. So that's, did I make it? I'll take questions.
How heavily used is the hall?
So how heavily used is the hall? We have had in library market since November of 2021 through September, we've had 459 reservations, but we've had almost 200 of those either end up canceling or no shows or declined reservations.
Wow.
Yes. So it is a lot, especially
because
for,
we don't do anything when.
no, we don't,
Correct.
it's not our practice to do any sort of punishment, tracking, whatever, when it comes to reservation cancellation, because ultimately, we've discussed it, but ultimately it's a really drain on staff time in order to track that more. Yes. And unfortunately, so like the cancellations could happen 3 weeks from the date it was offered, or it could happen the day of, and that's not necessarily tracked in our system.
Are there any groups that use it on a regular basis that we would need to work with to?
We might have a few of those. It is open for reservations 6 months out. So it's definitely at least a 6-month plan to phase that out. We have, with tax season coming up, ARC comes in and provides that service, and they have it reserved every Friday through April 15th. And we definitely want to keep that. We don't want to interfere with their schedule. I'm sure they've already started to print their marketing materials for that. So, yes.
So I have all kinds of questions.
Sure.
I don't want to argue down with all of them.
This is your opportunity to do it.
Oh, Scott.
So if I'm understanding this, we're thinking about turning this whole building into a staff area.
Yes.
Would that possibly open up areas in Penrose for additional meeting rooms or anything like that? Or are we just saying, if this is only going to be staff area and whatever we've got currently in Penrose is what we've got?
It will not open up public meeting rooms in the Penrose area. What it will do is give some more breathing room to the current Penrose staff area that we have. So it would allow for some adjustment of staffing locations. And then with that, because Penrose is really tight right now, we have some We have some staff areas that, you know, they've cobbled to facilities has done a masterful job of cobbling together some of the cubicles, but I know there's one area in particular that the two individuals whose desks are, you know, back to back where their backs would meet, alternate what days they work because they can't both sit in their chairs in their desk space in the same day.
Just a little concerned about, this is a public space, and if we're gonna cut public space and make it staff, that we're not giving anything back to the public to use. Unless there's some sort of plan to continue to use the main hall area for larger events.
We will have that as an opportunity. The public wouldn't necessarily they wouldn't be able to reserve that space on their own like they do currently. But should they, you know, we all have individuals who are in need of some of those, should they reach out to a leadership team member or a board member and make a request, we could give consideration to that at that.
Okay. If this was going to be turned into staff only area, I'm assuming that the restroom status would have to be upgraded as well.
The restroom there is an ADA restroom in that location. So that one was added when they opened opened it up to the public.
But there's only 2 restrooms, right?
There's 3, right, Gary?
Oh, here's the.
Or is there 2?
Men's restroom, okay.
Yeah.
Then the handicap one. Okay. Oh, that's right. There's one in the office area on the other side.
Okay, so there's ample restrooms.
Yes.
Good for now. Are we making decisions about this, or is this, because I would actually like to, I don't want to make a decision. I would like to see the plan.
So this was why we went ahead and brought it up here as a discussion item so that we could understand. So Tammy and her team would understand what kind of questions and issues need to be addressed so that we can look at making a decision in the future. That initially it was, let's make a decision. I said, we're not going to be doing that. So
Yeah.
I actually went down. Tammy was gracious enough to meet me there at like 7:30 the other day. Got a great tour. So it was helpful to see the space, kind of how they're planning to situate some stuff. So if you haven't spoken with her about that directly, I'd highly recommend it because it helps. Makes a little bit of sense. I understand your point there, and I had very similar. I said we just changed the name of this as a public space, and then to take it away feels harsh.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I told Tammy before, I'll say it here. I'm not sold on this plan. I'm not opposed to it. I'm really still trying to figure out what the best path forward is. We talked a little bit about what staff will be moving down there. And kind of it ends up being a little bit of a shuffle. We'll have groups from, I think it was 21C moving down there into the mezzanine area, which opens up some space here, which will have some other people move here. And so it effectively pulls people out of Penrose and puts them either in the hall here or east, if I recall, depending on what department, how the shuffle happens. And so it provides more breathing room to our most densely populated staff areas.
I mean, I do agree that there's a space area issue.
Yes. Yes.
I just remember going above the children's area and walking
Yes.
through that jungle
Maze.
and seeing how cramped everybody is. So
Mhm.
I completely understand. I would like to see a plan associated with this. I would also like to see costs associated with that.
Okay.
That puts a lot of burden on Gary, his staff, but you said he was awesome and his group was awesome, so that they should be able to do something like that. I would also like to know if there's a way, and I don't know if you would be able to answer this, if there is a way that we could keep the hall open to the public, but card some of these other areas. And I know that might have to do with wiring.
Yes, lots of wiring and the elevator wiring.
The elevators.
Yes.
Right. But like if the first floor I'm assuming it's the first floor because that's the main entrance to the building. That first floor area, if that could be parted for staff. But then if we were gonna have public programs, that would just be in the main hall area. And I know that that's just an awkward staircase that goes up to that
Mhm.
landing.
It's
But-
a really difficult area and frankly, putting more staff there, the acoustics are not set up well to prevent noise from either the public space or the staff area from crossing. So it's gonna be a little bit of an expense if we're gonna create more sound barrier. And that's gonna be that's gonna be an issue logistically if we commingle without that expense.
Yeah, because there's a weight limit on that specific landing.
On the mezzanine area, yes, there's a weight limit. And they did put up, I mean, they've put up some sound barrier, but Jeremiah would probably could share his experience with, depending on who's in the hall for what event, if he's able to do some work there.
Well, I'm really fortunate and he's out of town this week because we have a big science teacher that have been using it past 2 days and will be in there tomorrow as well, which is awesome, and they're using it. But there's a big limbo room, it's loud, and I'm up in the mezzanine in the corner, so I'm behind a closed door, and there's those sound dampening panels, and I cannot concentrate for the life of me. So luckily I'm able to hide in Kayona's office, but it makes it very difficult.
I mean, I've got ideas. Cause it would be nice, if, the basement over in the, Carnegie building that has all of the,
Regional history engineering.
yeah, and all those older documents and things like that. They're running out of space like crazy as well.
Yes.
Has there been a thought to maybe moving it or reallocating some of this space for that?
Well, for their storage area, that adds the added complication of having a temperature controlled storage area. So there would still be that added expense as well. So wherever, if we were going to do that, we'd still have to give that some consideration.
That would be, and that's a suggestion. I don't think that's gonna be a cheap suggestion.
No, I don't believe it'll be a
Um,
suggestion either.
But
I think in reviewing it, we believe that the suggestion, the alternate, the idea that, makes it the cheapest is using that as staff space, because we would need to make those extra security installations in that building to try and keep that building safe and secure as much as we possibly can for the public. And so transitioning staff over to that would be our cheapest option.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for now.
Mr. Kennedy, do you have any level of confidence, if we'll be able to retrofit that elevator to?
For level. So we have actually held off from even having someone come out and then delve into the guts of that, of what that would require, because I am 100% confident that it's not cheap. Whatever that solution is, whether we can retrofit the existing cable or whether we have to replace the existing cable, neither option is a significant cheap option. Obviously, one is cheaper than the other. That's what we would keep our fingers crossed for, but until more of a realistic, let's actually look at this. Just hasn't been behooved the district to actually have it looked at, because we are confident that
Is that elevator safe?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's obviously a reason. So they do their uranium.
They're all up to code and they're good, but retrofitting those older places is often very.
I haven't been in that elevator, so I don't know what it's like.
Meet Sammy at 7:30 in the morning, so we do that. We did. We made it all the way. Great, thank you. Any other questions on use of the hall? Okay,
So when are we gonna have a proposal? And would that go to something like internal affairs for discussion?
I would assume it's gonna come back through internal affairs before it hits this board, and so. If you have other questions that come up or thoughts or things that you would like to see, please reach out to Tammy so that she can get it all. Structured in a single package, as it moves through. Is there a
Well,
time?
I'm sorry. Will it affect next year's budget? So as we're doing the budget, will we be?
I think that's part of, I was gonna ask timeline for what you were thinking as far as either being able to get some of this information together or making the decision whether we're gonna make that staff here.
Well, there's always a plan, but I think we should be able to bring it to the internal affairs. And then I think from that, we'll be able to have time before the final budget to make adjustments if we need to. But it will impact, I mean, the decision one will impact whether or not we can make some of, if we use the money towards this, or we use the money, the contingency funds towards some of the safety upgrades that we'd like to do at Penrose. Yes.
Along, when you bring back, costs or whatever to, internal affairs, will you also have a better plan on how it's gonna really look? I mean, I think that's one of the things that I asked about in internal affairs, and it's exactly what Scott is saying, you know, what is it gonna look like? And,
So would you prefer floor plans then, like where we would set those desk spaces?
well, I'd like to, yeah.
You mind if I, so
Oh,
we had this conversation. One of the options was to put communications team down there. And so it would be having an open office environment suits the collaborative nature of communications fairly well. There are some space that can evolve. So with something along those lines, especially considering the weight limits on there, I don't know how much break up cubicle desk setups we can do in there, much different than we are now. And so I think likely the floor plan is going to stay pretty similar, just adding some additional furniture for desk space is my understanding.
Yes.
So the plan itself would be more along who's moving, where they're moving, and kind of what that trickle down tends to be more than the actual floor plan is, because it's not going to change drastically.
but what I'm asking, so then, and this is what I'm envisioning now that you said that open idea, because one of the things that was brought up is it could create space as well for classroom professional development, I think. So, but whatever is going to be done then on the main floor, the big hall area, not up in the mezzanine.
No, we would leave the main hall area as it
Is,
is, in
okay,
case we needed that for training
Training.
spaces. The classroom and the mezzanine would have some office spaces, like the classroom would become more of that collaborative space. And then there'd be some use up on the mezzanine area where Jeremiah's office will be and will continue to be. And then the other office area on the other side of the main hall where the offices are currently, those will continue to be office space. But the main hall would remain open should we need it as extra training spaces.
So
yeah, it does help me. I've been in there before and I know there's that classroom space, that there's
Yes.
that one big space and then there's offices all around. So I guess that's what I'm just trying to figure out, you know, how many people are gonna be there. I don't know how many people are in communications, if that was a group that was moving there, you know. Okay, well. We'll have a better idea as time goes on.
We can do that.
anything else? Oh, peace. Right.
Before we move on,
Yes.
I request a 5-minute break. And we're about a 2-hour mark.
Sure. We can take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 6:52.
Perfect.
Next up is our business items. So first up is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have the minutes of the August 16th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting and the minutes of the September 8th, 2023 Board of Trustees retreat. Any objections to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to item B, discussion summary of the board retreat. Mr. Taylor.
All right, I'll be quicker than I was in my report. We did meet, oh my gosh, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
We had our Robert rules training, which I really appreciated. Cheryl, we are okay. I went through the training with us and it was much appreciated and learned quite a bit during that. And continuing to read the Robert's Rules books that we have. Great read. We also had some updates on some things, the Manitou Carnegie building that Tiana gave. We also had, I gave a small report on the trustee position where we were at the time. And we went through changes to the policy process, discuss what really should be included as part of a board policy. And we also discussed potential options for seeking funding, additional funding for the library. That is all.
Thoughts on how the retreat went? We should look at for
Oh, yeah. Thanks for ready.
I thought it was great. I like the Roberts rules training, but I do not read the whole book. It's hard.
Are you reading the Robert's rules or
Oh gosh, I'm not reading the big old math book. No, I'm reading the abridged version.
When I was given that book, I said, oh, wow, this whole book, you have to read through this whole that. Wow. And then I forget who gave it to me. Somebody said, oh, that's the brief version.
Yeah, a brief overview.
Yeah.
Introductions. That's a good read. Thank you.
Yeah.
For the organization.
All right, next up is decision 23-9-2 equal employment opportunity policy, Ms. Lasley.
As I shared in committee, the reason most of you aren't looking at a red line version is because the whole thing is red. So we took notes from what public services is doing, trying to get internal personnel policies on a regular review schedule. And this is one that hadn't been reviewed since like 2008. So as you can imagine, things have changed. Unlike many policies that we own within the library, this is kind of not one of them. This is one where legal just does it based on, it's too legal. So that's why you're looking at the version. Are there any questions?
I'm gonna ask my question about what we're actually gonna be voting on. Are we voting on the entire document or are we voting on just the board policy paragraph at this point? Because I know that when we discussed that during the retreat, but I couldn't recall if this was one of the policies that we were going to do that whole policy thing with.
The way that I read this is that this would probably be fully board policy that dictates other administrative policies down the line. So that's the way I would probably lean on this. My thoughts. Not allowed to change. It's all basically
it's legalese. It's everything's legal language.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, any other discussion? You have a motion to approve policy.
I move that the Pikes Peak Library District Board of Trustees approve the equal employment opportunity policy as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Heather. All right, next is decision 23-9-3, resolution opposing proposition H. So, a little bit of background for those of you who aren't aware and haven't been involved in conversations. H would actually decrease revenue to the library district fairly drastically not in the initial next couple of years, but in the long-term run. And so, considering we're already on fairly tight budgets across the district, having the state constrict that even more would be very adverse to our mission and to what we're trying to accomplish. Hence, we have resolution here for our board to oppose HH and for a no vote. We have any discussion around the resolution? All right, can I have a volunteer read the resolution?
I'll do it.
Thanks, Scott.
It's a resolution opposing proposition HH, whereas proposition HH will go before the voters in November 2023. Whereas if approved by voters, proposition HH would result in lower property taxes for a period of 10 years. Whereas Pikes Peak Library District gets much of its revenue from property taxes, which enables it to provide a wide range of library services to its patrons and communities. Whereas the state purportedly would make up or backfill some of the lost tax revenue to Pikes Peak Library District, as well as to local governments, schools, and other public entities negatively impacted by the lower property taxes. Whereas the state would generate the money for such backfill payments by raising the Tabor cap, the latter of which benefits taxpayers by limiting how much tax money the state can retain. Whereas it is reported that much of the extra money generated by raising the Tabor cap would go to school districts and a smaller amount to local governments, special districts, and other public entities such as Pikes Peak Library District. Whereas Pikes Peak Library District, on behalf of the taxpayers and communities serves, is concerned that the backfill payments that it would reportedly receive would not be sufficient to replace the revenue that it would lose due to the reduction in property taxes, and therefore therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Pikes Peak Library District. Board of Trustees opposes and encourages voters to vote no on proposition HH, adopted this whatever day it is, day of September 2023. I'm sure that would probably say today's date, right? Yeah.
Right. Wait, one second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, any other business that we need to tend to this evening? All right, meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to all of our applicants. You're welcome to stick around and a little bit with them, but thank you.